17. For most of you.
Me. That was an interesting day.
Okay, we are live on YouTube.
Okay, let me know when you want me to start admitting.
Okay.
Yeah, when did we do 503, 504?
5:02 now.
So 5:03, should we give her a minute? Does someone want to put in the waiting room like, we'll be letting everyone in a moment?
Did you text her?
I did, yeah.
You haven't heard anything.
Yeah.
And Rye, I'm gonna make you the host. Can you make me the co-host?
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I can't share my screen.
Oh, I'm gonna make you co-host too. Oh shoot. Yeah, Rye, you're gonna have to make Ruben co-host.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, am I also co-host now? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got it.
But, you know,
Oh, yay. Okay.
Oh. Tell me when we're letting everyone in. No sign yet? Oh wait, she's here. She's here.
I just admitted her.
Okay.
I saw her.
Perfect.
So,
Hi, Laura. Thank you.
hi.
All right.
Yay.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming, Laura.
Make her a co-host. Hi, Laura. Should we make you a
Hey,
co-host?
Laura, welcome back.
Oh yeah, totally. I'll do that. Making you a co-host so you can share when it's time.
Okay.
And I think Lynn needs to be a co-host as well.
Oh God, yeah.
All right, yeah.
Where is Lynn?
She's What do you guys think? Should we let everyone in? Yeah? All right.
okay, I'll go. Let's
Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're just going to let a few more people come in, and then we will start. Okay, it looks like everyone is in, which is amazing. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. First off, I need to let you know that we're going to be recording this talk. So you should turn off your video if you don't want to be in the recording. Also, if you can all mute yourself, if somehow you aren't already. I am Kaisa Johnson from Artists for Democracy. Welcome to the 7th and final Artists for Democracy Artist Talk series. We are so excited to have Laura Owens here today. A huge thanks to her, especially since she just got off a flight a few hours ago. We are super grateful that she's joining us. First off, we want to introduce you to all the people at Artists for Democracy who've been working so hard on everything we've been doing. These talks, social media, the website, the issues pages, phone banking, letter writing, not to mention all the things before the lead up to the 2020 election. So a huge thanks to Nick Angelo, Deborah Ashheim, Lisa Ann Auerbach, Scott Benzel, Lynn Berman, Marissa Fudernick, Luke Hardman, Aubrey Ingmar Manson, Bronwyn Malden, Sarana Mehra, Melissa Passman, Bri Rocklin, and Cynthia Segovia. Thank you all for your countless hours of work over the past few years and especially the past few months. We hope that these talks have provided both inspiration and information about the importance of voting in this election, civic action, and how art and artists can be a part of that. So next we are going to hear from Saskia Bailey from Aliso Prints and Ruben Ochoa. Ruben was our first speaker, and they have collaborated on a print that will benefit Artists for Democracy, Crenshaw Dairy Mart, and Dignity and Power Now. We are so happy to be included in such an amazing group of artists and organizations. Then we're going to hear from A4D member Deborah Ashheim, who will talk to us about her 365 Days of Voters project that we've been featuring on our Instagram. And then A4D member Lisa Ann Auerbach will introduce you to Laura, and then the main event, Laura's Artist Talk. If you have questions for Laura, please enter them in the chat, and Lisa will ask them for you when they're in conversation after the talk. Finally, before we say goodbye, A4D member Lynn Berman will be giving you a few tips about tracking your ballot and making sure it's counted and why it's important to vote early if possible and in person or dropping off your mail-in ballot to a drop box, but just not using the mail anymore. So with that, I will pass it to you, Saskia and Ruben.
Okay, hi, I'm Saskia Bailey from Aliso Editions. Is Ruben still?
Yes.
Great, okay, hey.
Hi, everyone. Ruben Ochoa, the first artist that spoke. Thank you all for having me back and having us both able to present for a few minutes. Let me share screen. Give me 1 second. So I made this print. I made an edition for to raise money for several grassroots organizations. One, because I was so inspired by what Artists for Democracy is doing. So I created this series of editions of prints, also to support Crenshaw Dairy Mart and Dignity and Power Now. And so they're based off my mom's restaurant. My mom has a restaurant. She's had it for over 84. I got to do the math, sorry. She got a new sign, but this is one of her old signs, the classic open, abierto, close, cerrado sign. So when Deborah asked me to do a talk for Artists for Democracy and to think of ways of how to get out the vote, I came up with taking this sign that I grew up seeing, having, and making it to bilingual text for voting. And so I made one in English and Spanish: vote, go vote, and go, let's go votar. It could have been, many ways. Vote, vote in Spanish is vote. Vota is also vote. I like how vota could be translated to vato. Votamos, let's go votar. Votemos. So I went with votar. And then I also, my household, I try to teach my kids Spanish, but they're also learning Mandarin. I have mixed kids, so they're learning Mandarin, and they wanted me to make a sign that was reflective of them speaking Mandarin. So this one is, and I'm going to butcher it, but tope. So tope. I apologize. Sorry, Jasper, Emmett, and Cam. But this is again touching upon my family subjectivity from my mom's restaurant. All these marks, these stress marks, were all pulled from the actual sign and translated to this silkscreen edition. And of course, my kids are trying to use their platform to vote, and so that's Jasper with his vote, on the side of his head. So. And I'll pass it over to Saskia, who has a lot of information on the editions and excitement about the editions.
Yeah, so something that was really amazing, like Aliso Editions, we're a relatively new publishing company here in Los Angeles. And this is like the first charitable initiative that we've done. And it was really cool, like to do something that was, like a social initiative, especially with the election coming up. And so both prints were donating 60% of proceeds evenly to 3 organizations: Artists for Democracy, Crenshaw Dairy Mart, like Ruben said, and Dignity and Power Now. And so that's 60% of every single print sold. We've also started this initiative I'm calling the Young Voters / Young Collectors Initiative, where if you did want to purchase one, and you didn't want it for necessarily yourself, you can donate it to a student or person under 18 or over, just somebody who couldn't normally afford them. They're $150 a piece, by the way. But then they get to own a piece of art and get inspired to go vote, which is the main point of making these 2 editions. They were printed by Tom Krakauer, who's a silkscreen master here in Los Angeles, who was able to preserve a lot of the these little marks that were on the original sign that Ruben based the edition off of. And they were generated in like a record 2 weeks, I think, which is like, you know, with the election coming up, there was like just, yeah, a lot of motivation on all sides during this project to make it happen. And we're really proud.
And Elisa is a really young publishing house here in Los Angeles, so it's really exciting to work with them. They're about to complete their first year in business.
That's right, yeah.
So when Emmett Walsh, who emailed me earlier this year, asked if I wanted to do an edition, I didn't have anything in mind until Deborah said, come do a talk for A4D, and let's create some stuff for getting out the vote. And then I went and reached out to Aliso, and then trying to build this coalition of everyone supporting each other with Crenshaw Dairy Mart, A4D, and Dignity Power Now. So everything we can do to address inequities. And
yeah, should anybody want to ask me or Ruben questions, I'm going to be providing my email and my cell number and the link to our website where you can purchase the editions in the chat.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Deborah, and for once I'm going to try to share the screen properly. So I'm just going to quickly show you a project I've been working on for the past 18 months. And let's see here. Okay, great. So I had a really cool job from April 2019 to April 2020 when it got kind of interrupted by COVID. But I was the creative strategist, artist in residence for LA County Registrar Recorder County Clerk. And it was a position created under the LA County Board of Supervisors Equity and Inclusion Initiative to embed artists in different cultural departments, different departments. And it was a partnership between LA County Department of Arts and Culture, and in my case, it was the Registrar Recorder, but there was an artist working in the Park Service, there was an artist working in the Department of Mental Health, one was working in LA County Libraries. My job was to use art strategies to reach out to historically underrepresented communities of voters. So I really loved it because it was the job that was the most aligned with my own values that I've ever had. But I didn't know how to start. LA County is the largest and most diverse electoral district in the country. And the Registrar Recorder is responsible for overseeing the elections for all 88 cities in LA County and the unincorporated areas. Just to put it in context, LA County is like 10 million people. It's fully 25% of California. And as an electoral district, we're larger than many of the 50 states. So I started this project called 365 Days of Voters as an outreach project. I would go with the outreach team to various kinds of events where they were doing voter registration. Maybe it was like a college campus or at the LA Times Book Fair or at the zoo. And I needed an excuse to talk to people. So I would say, do you want to be today's voter? I'll draw you and we'll post you on LA County Registrar Recorder, social media, along with your reasons for voting. So, hey, go to the next. No. Okay. So we went to like community events and people would tell me they're great, like different reasons for voting. This was in Southgate. This was somebody who talked about representing disability rights advocates. This is somebody talking about wanting to see a city that was more for bicycles than for cars. I got to go to the immigration and naturalization ceremonies, which was amazing because there'd be like 5,000 newly minted citizens that we were registered to vote right away. And some of them came from countries where they had never voted. Maybe they didn't have free and fair elections. Why isn't it going forward? Come on, thing. There we go. Yeah, so they would have these little American flags that they waved. That was like adorable. We got to go to RuPaul Drag Con. And so this was Lady Laritza who actually texted me today, but one of the drag queens said she votes because it makes her feel skinny. I worked, and then I did a lot of work with 4 Cal States and 6 community colleges. So this was a student from Cal State LA. This is a student from Cal State Northridge. This is a student from LA Valley College who said she votes because it's punk. I love this guy. He said, I have autism, but I still vote. He also went to LA Valley College. And then sometimes we got to go with the Secretary of State to high schools and pre-register students that were 16 and 17. And they had a lot of opinions about how the adults were not doing a particularly good job of running the world. So they were looking forward to being able to vote. And then the pandemic hit. And so my contract renewal was interrupted, and mostly because I was going out with the outreach team and they said, we're not doing any more events. We can't do events during the pandemic. And so I transitioned my project to a social media project. So I also want to give a shout out to the cities of Pasadena and Glendale that have given me some funding through their arts and culture commissions. But essentially, we made an online form, and I just started having people send me headshots and writing about their reasons for voting. So these are some of the voters that have reached out to me. I've drawn about 680 voters now, so I'll definitely draw at least 700 by the 3rd. I post 6 every night between 8 and 11. And in the beginning, it was people I knew, but then the whole idea is that it's like peer-to-peer messaging. So hopefully people will repost and that will encourage people in their circle to vote. Maybe somebody from there will reach out to me and then I'll draw them. So this is a PhD candidate at Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh. This is an artist, April Banks. She's great. And one of the things I really loved was like, we live in so I can't really see the text, but we live in a time where politicians, some politicians talk about being strong as if dominating people and being tough is being strong. But I think that the strongest comments have been when people have been vulnerable, like the boy who admitted that he, not admitted, but that he was willing to say that he had autism and that didn't stop him from voting. Or April talked about sometimes she feels like voting, doesn't always make a difference, but she still wants to vote because she's hopeful. And so I felt like the real strength was when people acknowledge sometimes that you can't necessarily feel like voting is going to solve everything, but it's still really important that you did it. That got a lot of response. And I think that that's what I was really impressed with, people's willingness to be vulnerable. This is a pastor in Minnesota, and she was part of a group of clergy that didn't want the right to own the idea that people of faith would automatically support the right-wing elements of the Republican Party. And so she's part of a group called Common Cause that is bringing like faith-based ethical morality back into politics, but they don't see that, they're for the other side. This is a guy who actually lives like less than half a mile from me that I never would have met. So the other thing I really liked is, the whole idea of this project was to use social media and peer-to-peer messaging for people to reach out to their friends, to model that they were a voter and hopefully influence other people to vote. But I also like this idea of creating a kind of an online community during this time where we're stuck at home, where people are meeting each other through this project that might not have met. I just like this woman's style. She has one named Piera, like Cher or Madonna. And people gave a shout out to the communities that they represent. And then towards the end, I started thinking that even though I've met a lot of people, like a lot of these people that I've drawn, I've never met, but I've kind of come to know them through the project. There were still like groups that I couldn't reach the internet. So I started, this is a bunch of professors at UC Irvine in the School of Social Ecology. And so, here's Ruben Ochoa, our friend. And look, there's his languages. And I'm going to show Jeff Fulmer because he's been such a great supporter and come to every talk. So the city of Pasadena let me put these on the bus in English and Spanish because I felt like there were people that I wasn't necessarily reaching through social media. So even though ridership is down, a lot of essential workers and people with disabilities still ride the bus. So we made these posters and put them on all 29 Pasadena transit buses. And then I started volunteering with this group called Headcount, which I also want to give a shout out to. They're great and they do in-person voter registration. So I started going with them every Wednesday to Homeboy Industries to meet some of the people that are part of this amazing community of people who've come through in a lot of cases, like involvement with gangs or the criminal justice system. And some of them talked about not being able to vote because they're still on parole, but really looking forward to getting their voting rights back, which I thought was an important perspective that needed to be in my project, even though it's a little scary to do in person. And then I went down to Compton and we were registering voters at the food bank down there. So this is Andrew, a guy who works at the food bank in Compton, was volunteering. And that was great too, because one of my original communities that I want to include was low-income communities. And so some people talked about how important it was that their voices be heard. And that's where I met my only really legit celebrity, which is Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, who was down there with us giving food out. So here's Flea saying, he said he's really down with voting. And then there were some people from healthcare workers that that wanted to make sure that their voice is heard in this election because they're important. They have a perspective that's really important. And this was somebody that was doing COVID testing at Homeboy. So that's my project. If you want to be in it, there's a few more days, but it totally closes on November 3rd. So if you go to 365 Days of Voters on Instagram, it's all one word, and send me a direct message. I'll send you a link to a forum where you can upload your headshot, and I will try like hell to draw every single person that wants to be drawn between now and next Tuesday. And that's it. And I don't know how to get up. Here we go. Okay.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa, and it's really wonderful to have the pleasure of introducing Laura Owens to you all this evening. Aside from being a super rad artist, she's also an important part of our A4D history. So it's really great to have her as our last artist talk prior to the November 3rd election. And it feels like a particular kind of bookend, or maybe hopefully it feels like a bookend. This community of politically minded artists first came together on February 12th, 2017, which was less than a month after the current president was inaugurated. The initial email sent out to artists read in part, "We invite the greater Los Angeles art community to join us in constructing a network to respond to the increasingly alarming executive actions, policy proposals, and the culture of fear, hatred, and exclusion." This letter, signed by Laura, along with others working on the Hammer Museum Artist Council, drew hundreds of artists who gathered in solidarity and with intention at 356 Mission, a space that Laura ran with a couple others. Since 2017, what started as the Artist Political Action Network went through a few iterations, one of them becoming this one, Artists for Democracy, A4D. At 356, in addition to APAN, Laura organized fundraisers and events for various organizations, including the ACLU, Proyecto Pastoral, and Reach LA, which held their yearly Ovaness Ball at the space. And it was pretty wild, those events. Her recent activism work has revolved around fundraising and mentorship with the House of Art, which grew out of Reach LA. The House of Art invites LGBTQIA+ young people of color to work with professional artists to learn dance, audio video production, fashion, music production, and street art, and any other kind of art they have interests in. It's an amazing project, so please check out their website, follow them on social media, and get involved. Their website should be in the chat. It is in the chat. Laura's work as a painter is legendary. She has questioned assumptions about painting for nearly 3 decades. Her work has a complex and omnivorous appetite for odd juxtapositions, the quotidian, pop culture, art history, animals, time, scale, point of view, and materiality. Her work has been seen all over the world, including recent solo exhibitions at the Whitney Museum of American Art in New York, the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston, and Secession in Vienna, Austria. Her amazing mosaic mural was recently installed at Terminal B in LaGuardia Airport in New York, and she has upcoming exhibitions at Foundation, I'm going to pronounce this wrong probably, Vincent van Gogh in Arles, France, and at the Cleveland Museum of Art in Cleveland, Ohio. So I'm happy to welcome Laura. And as a quick reminder, if you do have questions, please put them in the chat. Thanks. Great to see you, Laura. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Thank you, A4D and Rye and Deborah. That's an awesome project. I'm so glad I got to see that. And I got to see Ruben, your lecture on YouTube, but I wasn't at the original, but I really enjoyed watching all the lectures prior to mine on your YouTube channel, which is great. And thank you, Lisa, who's also an amazing artist who makes amazing, politically minded and otherwise, sculpture, painting, wall work. I don't know what paintings made out of woven. Yeah. So anyway, check out her work as well. I guess I'll share my screen. I made a PowerPoint. Okay. Let me see if I can do, does it better if I do slideshow? Or does it not? Is this good? Or, okay. Anyway, I'm starting off kind of recently, and I'll go backwards in time. I'm kind of starting with a recent project I did, which was a show locally at Matthew Marks Gallery. Whoops. And it was a series of tables and 100 or so unique books. Each table had kind of hidden secrets and pockets and videos and drawers that would open and sounds that got made as you experienced the show. And I thought of it as a kind of book in and of itself, each table. So, but I specifically one table, this was the first table you saw where the person who was working worked, and a lot of the books on this table had to do with a theme of like welcoming you into the space, and like a sign-in guide and alphabet book and index of the whole show. And there's an alarm. I don't know if I'll have a picture of that later. So when you go in, it just looks like normal tables, but underneath there was a lot going on, so that there was a lot of mechanics involved. But I want to specifically focus on one table because all the tables had themes in my mind. And one of them I think was really inspired by the last 4 years of my life and of I think some of the experiences, a lot of us are a flavor of experience that I think has taken over a lot of our lives, which is maybe prior to the last 4 years too, which is this theme of like illusion and gaslighting and let me see. Let's skip that. Okay, so this is the table where kind of every book on this table in my mind sort of made a companion to each book to sort of round out a sort of idea that I was trying to, I guess, illustrate. So here's how it might look when you go in. Anyone who wanted to you were invited to like flip through the books at your own pace, but when you open some, it would a magnet in the book might open a drawer and show you like these drawers would pop open and audio would go off. Also, 2 projectors were underneath the table that would then project some videos, which I'll show you. There's one that's going. Many of the videos I got from, I've been doing a series of kind of recycling my own spam emails. So I started, like if you're on Instagram, you notice that you're getting hit with specific ads, right? And so I started getting like what I thought were kind of strange game-like ads. And so I started like kind of downloading those and using those as sort of raw material, which here's, if I play video on Zoom, does it work or no? Is it moving or not really? Anyway, so I kind of would, I have this going, but I kind of would use parts of these ads and sort of just to kind of show the absurdity of, you know, what was being sold on these Instagram ads, and would collage it together with, let's see what this one is. Okay, you get the idea though. Maybe you guys have gotten some of these ads. Anyway, in the context of, and then I also did, I found some like, you know, each one, so this is a raw footage of food, food preparation for like probably for a commercial or something that, you know, where it's probably all made out of glue and paste. So there's this idea of things being fake and being made just for advertising purposes, which was another, this is a pretty great one. This is some raw footage of a woman who's supposed to be pretending to like be seriously working at her desk. But as we get to the end, oh, and throwing things away in a trash can. All of these themes had to do with someone giving you information that's false, ideas of gaslighting that go back, you know, hundreds and hundreds of years. One of the books, so there she's laughing. I thought that was so cute. But anyway, let's see. There's more. This one's pretty good. Okay. This was another a WikiHow. Then this actually turned into the gaslighting book, which I'll show you more. But I turned this. I turned this into a video, which would pop up if at certain moments, if you hit the magnet, or I had it on a time sensor too. And this is just to say, this is just one table and one theme in the show. So other themes were way more positive, like growth and, you know, or more like, well, like rounded of the human experience. This is really just trying to show, this table was really just trying to show this sort of superficiality, illusion, seduction through advertising. So rainbows was a theme that went through the show. And so in this one, I used a lot of artificial feeling rainbows that I found off of greeting cards and made a book sort of thematizing the use of rainbows, down to this one, which was just a bizarre coincidence that I was able to find, that we found this one, which says in German, my marketing department says it has to be this way, meaning to have the rainbow. I forget what that's called. Sorry. Just a few more. And then just to sort of show, so when the last election happened, I had been getting these spam emails, maybe many of you do, that were, one series was Clear Path Deals. It was a company that was sending me stuff. And so I had turned them into paintings as a way of like recycling these emails and feeling like, oh, there's a reason why I'm getting these. And I think that was one way of me turning this, these spams that I started getting from the White House, basically February, March 2017. I just was like, why am I on this list? Why am I getting your press releases? And I was so fascinated because they were so poorly written, such propaganda, absolute lies. And I didn't know what I was going to do with them. I have a book with me, just to show you. So this is one of the few books I made with online publishing, and the rest of the books I make in with a group of amazing bookbinders and helpers in my studio. Ben Carlson actually helped me do InDesign with this book. So basically, when you open it, it could very well it plays itself as a nonfiction book, but what it is every email I got sent from the White House from 2017 till the show, and I edited it into a nonfiction book. So it's like turning the idea of his gaslighting me to me me throwing it forward, hopefully to kind of keep spinning the idea into its endpoint of insanity. But here's another one I made that was, I mash all these mashups of food. I thought was another kind of gaslighting, where this is like a Cheetos fried burger. This is chicken fried bun. There was just, anytime I could find, I can't remember what this one was. Anytime I could find two foods that were turned in, these were macaroni and Cheetos. I just sort of put it into this sort of, it was a really brightly colored printed book that sort of spoke to the grossness of what was being sold to you. And then I made this end paper, and this obviously is taken from imagery that's about 100 years old, or maybe 50s too. Chocolate cigarettes or candy cigarettes was something I got when I was a kid. And I thought that was kind of one of the perfect gaslighting, kind of seductive things. It's really literally trying to get kids hooked on smoking, or thinking smoking is cool. So, and I just thought these boxes were really beautiful. And so we made, these are silk screens, vector, all cut out, and each, it's not using silkscreen paint, it's using this sort of gouache paint. So it's a real high color, high intensity color. This was from a book of magic from the turn of the century. So literally about making illusions. I just sort of edited it. And this is the earliest one, which I was really excited to find. I think it's from 1830s-ish. And basically someone, and this is maybe the most scary, someone there's a correlation that goes between the invention of science fiction, or the popularization of science fiction, and colonialization, kind of they both come up as worldwide phenomenons at the same time in history. And basically for I think it was consecutive days, this New York newspaper, someone said that they claimed to be the scientists who had the Hubble telescope was new. And so they were looking at through the telescope and saying that they saw people living on the moon. So it's this perfect, coming together of using technology and science. And I guess what I liked about this particular example of gaslighting is just that something like a telescope, which is seemingly neutral, could be used to kind of brainwash and, further ideas of colonialization, even though it has a very neutral seeming scientific thing. It's whose hands is it in and who's describing. So anyway, it sold out the paper in New York 6 times in one day, when they said that they had found, animals and a whole race of beings on the moon. And so I found all the original articles were sort of put together 50 years later, and then I reprinted them and made this book, and then I drew in it as kind of ad-libbing to it, questioning the the neutrality of the telescope. And this is a flip book I made that was on that table. I think I have a video which maybe helps. So one of them is like a two-sided quarter, two-headed quarter, and the other side is someone card shuffling, and in the middle of it, this pop-up ad comes up. And then this is another book I made. I've been fascinated by DARPA, which is a wing of a kind of highly funded black market money part of the Pentagon that has like enormous amounts of money funneled to it. And they often do this thing of like kind of recruiting open source. They'll have a problem, like how do they need to solve like 5G bandwidth problem for the Pentagon. So they'll open source a competition for high school students and young college, to like come forward, and there might even be prizes or something. And they don't hide the fact that it's DARPA doing it. And they also, recruit from high schools and colleges, like MIT and that, to go and work at DARPA. But I kind of just like wanted to use their kind of, this is actually on the Spectrum challenge that they did, which was this sort of like them trying to open source up problem solving for how to widen the 5G network. So I turned it into, I have a copy of that too, because this is another one that I did online printing. So this is I did a bunch of different versions of this artificial intelligence. And they claim to be like the people who invented the internet and a bunch of other stuff. But so I turned it, I looked at a bunch of YA fiction and sort of took their proposals for, either recruiting proposals or getting open sourcing these sort of like competitions to solve problems, or just their PR. And then I switched out a lot of what they wrote with, or their pictures with YA style, like illustrations, and basically edited together a YA fiction that's kind of just completely based on their language. But using these fonts and stuff, it makes it extremely ironic and in the tone of YA fiction. So, and here's the gaslighting book that I made. And this one had and gaslighting is a term that's was coined because of a movie, I think is called is it called Gaslighting? I'm sorry, I'm super jet lagged, so I'm like, my brain's not really functioning very well. But basically it's a movie about this woman, and I'll play, this was the audio, it was an audio book. So like, how kids' books sometimes have sound in the back. So I just basically did something like that, but this sound was this. So when you opened it, so I'm like gaslighting you by having these ringtones go, and possibly maybe that's the sound on your phone or whatever. So when you open this book, these go off. And then I tried to give like actual information, a lot of it cribbed from the internet, from WikiHow or different research I'd done. But the original Gaslighting is a movie where a husband is sort of like making his wife go crazy by turning the gas lamps down in the house. And then she'd be like, "Did you see that?" And he'd be like, "What are you talking about?" Yeah, I guess I feel like there's person to person, gaslighting and manipulation, and basically, so I'm hoping to fill this out, but I'm hoping to write a real book about gaslighting and sociopathy, which is a very hot topic. But I feel like I've have so much research that I want to pursue finishing it. Basically, I think as a culture, much of what I've been thinking about in terms of where we are is that much of what we know has been manipulated, and so and now the fact that everything is a bit manipulated and it's impossible to tell the truth. It's like I think that something that maybe we need to know more about. Who is a sociopath? How do you teach a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old to identify a sociopath? What kind of things can they do to protect themselves? Because I think as a culture, we are just like almost too naive about what's going on. Not to be paranoid or anything, but I just anyway, these are all the pages. A lot of these are hand drawn. And this is an earlier book based on those clear path deal spams I was getting, where it's just sort of like using it as raw material. I think I'll just go. This was a bootleg of my own book that I put on the table. So it's like I had someone, without showing me, just take my book and take iPhone photos of it and send it off to get printed. So it's a bootleg of something that was out of print, which bootleg is like kind of fits in the theme a little bit. And this was a game based on Candyland and Candy Crush. Basically, just talking about the manipulation of the game and diabetes, and these are some small books that were on the table, and I'm just going to quickly go through all of these. These were based on wallpaper from another project that were on the table, and this was a Trump Loy book I had on my bookshelf, and I think I needed it to fit on a certain area, and so I had it chopped down and rebound it. But Trump Loy being a perfect, like, kind of fool the eye, being another way of saying the kind of theme I was trying to get to with this. And this is pretty disturbing. This is a person, Matthew Hopkins, who I found because I found a book in the library Bram Stoker wrote about his favorite basically sociopaths of all time. This guy was one of them. And so I took the chapter Bram Stoker wrote about him, and he basically was just a serial killer who murdered teenage girls in England, and under the auspices of, witches and there was another theme that went through the show, which was Van Gogh. And so the one book on this table was about Otto and Leonard Wacker. And this book they were a famous trial of, I think they're cousins or uncle and nephew. I can't remember. One was a gallerist, one was a painter, and they made fake Van Goghs. They got caught in the 1920s, and was the only time that Van Gogh fakes have really had a trial. I think it was at The Hague. But I printed the images of the fakes, and then I made drawings in the book next to it. This is another book about another table on Van Gogh, and this was about universal ideas of creativity in the cosmos, and this was a table that was about entropy and renewal. So I'm going to kind of skip ahead because I feel like we're running out of time. This was a math and music table. This was that front table. This is just going back in time to some highlights of paintings I've made that I thought were influenced by like kind of circumstances in the bigger world for me. And this was something I made in 2003. And the run up to the election, and we were going to a lot of, it wasn't the election, it was the run up to the Gulf War II. And we were protesting a lot. And so I made this painting as a kind of depiction of what was going on in my personal life. Oh. Oh, sorry. Rye texted me. I didn't know if I was supposed to stop, but he said to keep going. Okay. So this is from the European National Championship, which is not the World. My brain is really fried. Not the World Cup. World Cup is the soccer big one. This was the smaller one, just the European one. And anyway, I just really like this photo because it was two people. I think they played on Madrid's team normally, but because it was like they were playing for Italy and France, you know, I think the French team won. So he went over and gave his teammate, his private club teammate, a hug after the game. I just really liked this image because I had been working on these images of bodies coming together and making kind of sculptures with two bodies becoming one. So I used it and put it inside of like a kind of Escher. There's an image of an Escher painting down there in the puddle. This is again around 2004, probably 2003, around the time of invading Iraq. And I guess it was a more personal response to my feelings about what was happening and just like kind of, and I don't know, this is another thing I did maybe in around the same time, and you can't really tell, but in the back are these two ships blowing each other up, but they both have American flags on the ships, sort of just a comment on, like, there's the world and then there's just America like kind of destroying itself. This was for, I think, a benefit I did. This, I think, again, was for a benefit for around the same time. And these were stuff based on the Bayeux Tapestry, which was one of the most amazing in existence artworks on the planet. If you ever can see it, I think it's in Normandy. It was made by many women. It was traveled around Europe on a caravan, like on the outside of a caravan, to tell the story of this war. And this is not it, but I have another painting I'm going down to. This is a painting I ended up making from it, but it's all this cruel embroidery. Lisa, have you seen it? The Bayeux Tapestry. Okay, we're gonna do a GoFundMe to send Lisa to see this in Normandy, because it really is the genesis of your art, I think.
I've seen it in pictures, but not in person.
Yeah, well, this is a painting I did of it, so it doesn't really look like this.
Yeah.
I just kind of like you know, using this image of war at a time when I felt like senseless war was happening again. This is Terence McKenna. I found someone looking for Terence McKenna in the back of a classified. I don't know if you guys know who that is, but Terence McKenna was a kind of philosopher, advocate for mushroom technology. I don't know what you would call it, like the the highly evolved species of mushrooms on the planet that might have ways of transcending our problems through psychedelics and other means. He's just an interesting all-around thinker. So I hate to just start it with like psychedelics, but I found someone looking for him in the back of a Berkeley Barb, which was a radical newspaper in Berkeley. And this is again those recirculating those spam ads, sort of like making something out of shit, like turning it into something better. I feel like that sometimes is an uplifting thing to do. And it just also reminded me, I don't know if anyone's as old as me, to get those Ronco ads on cable television. Maybe you had to live in the Midwest. Everything was Ronco at like when cable television started, they had all this airtime that no one used. So it was kind of like, there's a channel for it now. I can't remember what it's called, but it was like they were selling you products that you'd sign up for, and you'd pay like $29.99 a month, only $29.99 a month, and you'd get the egg dicer slicer thing. Anyway, I think that turned into this sort of clear path deals that I was getting in my inbox. And this is just a little ode to Sister Carita, one of the great artists of the 20th century, that I put in a big wall mural that I did in San Francisco. She made this bumper sticker. I put it in as is, and it was in I mean, that's me painting her sticker. It's not actually her sticker. So it's like a trompe l'oeil. But along with another great artist, Charles Schultz, there too. Funny aside, so in this show, there was a number of phone numbers that were alluding to texting and being out of time of, they look like they're from the 60s or 70s, but it says text me at this number. So you could think kind of like something's up. Why would it say text? There weren't texts back then. And if you text the number and you ask a question, there was audio recordings that worked like a magic 8-ball. And like, we had like 1,000 different possibilities based on keywords that would respond to your question, like how am I doing, or should I get married, or where should I eat, or something like that. But I didn't really register to me that the Life Without War, she had put this telephone number on, not her phone number. It was probably a nonprofit or something at the time, but it was now someone else's number. And that guy was so sweet. Like, he figured out, like, he started getting all these phone calls because people in the show were calling. But yeah, we went in and repainted over it and made sure they stopped calling him and sent him a book, and he was super happy. But it was just, I thought that was maybe funny. This was another thing I found. I did this series of paintings because I had been working with old newspapers, and then I took apart the siding in my house, and the guy who built my house back in the 30s or something in Echo Park had like used something from the LA Times to it's this stuff that is used to make the metal mold that will then print the newspaper of the day. So it's a paper, it's like a tough paper mold, positive mold. So I had all these molds from 1942, that's when it was. Basically, I got about like 2 months of the newspaper in my house that I took out that he used as insulation, recycled insulation. So I made molds from them, negative and then positive, and I was able to print them. And I made prints, and then I made scans, and then I made silk screens, and I just kept recycling this newspaper. But then I would use it to like remake the newspaper, which looked like it was of the 40s, but then I would put in stuff from today and kind of redesign the font and stuff to make it look old. And so where there would be like an article about downtown getting just, the they had alternate time work schedules because there was already getting traffic jams with downtown or something. And so they were doing some kind of staggered thing. I think it was, so I put in like a rideshare program or something about Uber or something that was inside of that article, like kind of meshed it in with that article to show like the same problem was existing then. And this actually was from Tokyo Crows Over Baton, is this march that when the last oh my gosh, sorry, my brain is not working. Prisoners of war, not the last, but some of the biggest captured prisoners of war in the Philippines were marching from this cave in Baton. There was the last radio signal telegram was, they have a recording of it. Anyway, there was an article about it. And so then I went back and transcribed from finding on the internet, because the internet has everything like that now, that radio broadcast. And it's just like to me, it was like a very moving poem. It was the guy who was, basically like, we're here like rats in a cave. They're coming to get us, to take us out of this cave, and tell my mom I said goodbye. Like he's losing his mind at the same time. So I used the headline from the paper that I found, but then I used the actual broadcast as a poem. And then I turned this into a print and a painting. But these were the collated newspapers that I've been talking about. And here you can see I added, for like an older cigarette ad, I added in the candy cigarettes. Like there was an American Airlines ad that was from like the 40s, but I put in one from the 70s that was really creepy. That's like talking about a stewardess and says, think of her as your mother. For this milk ad, I put in schmilk, which is kind of like Soylent. I don't think they really took off, but it was like Soylent and schmilk, and these ones are being touted by Silicon Valley as like, you don't ever have to get up from your desk. You can work all day long. You just get some Soylent or some schmilk, and it's supposed to have like all the food or all the nutrients you need for a day. And this is, again, it's the height of it. We just 6 months after Pearl Harbor. So this was it was Americans' woman power, because women were the ones going to the store to buy stuff. So I just sort of like, messed around with the print ad. And anyway, maybe this is a front page. Army says alarm is real. I don't know if there was this big fake alert where, because they thought that the LA was going to get hit by because of Pearl Harbor, they had thought everybody was going to get hit here. So in the middle of the night, somebody made a sound or somebody saw something, and they just like 1,000 guns went off during a blackout. And I don't know if I have the picture of the guy sticking. Oh, you can see. I don't know. Can you see my cursor? See this guy? He's like in South, kind of like where South Central. That's I think someone from the LAPD who's sticking his hand basically in the sidewalk, because the shrapnel and stuff from these anti-aircraft guns that went off in the middle of the night. It was called the Battle of Los Angeles. You can look it up. Nobody was really killed or anything, but it was, along the lines again with the telescope book I did, where it's like, science and things are meant to convince you that something's about to get you or something's out there. But it's really like, and again, that there's some weird serendipity that happened with me finding this newspaper. I don't know if I passed by the one. It says New Owens map tomorrow. So I guess like most of the people during World War II didn't really have a clear understanding of where the troops were, or what the map of the world was even. So these people who were like drawings in the paper, like artists, like to show like this is where this many troops are today and this is where this many troops were actually like, it was like a really necessary part of the newspaper. And it just so happened I did not change it. This person's name was Owens, which is my last name. So I was just like, okay, I've got to do something with these newspapers. I don't know why I found them, but anyway, this is an intervention into it's called I can't remember the word. It's like declassified, but it's de-Christianized Catholic chapel in Rome, where I did a project on the ceiling. So the Catholic Church is no longer using it, but I kind of wanted to intervene into this Catholic Church with as many female deities as I could find and think of in prehistory, and up to the Marys and people we know might have actually been alive. But just to sort of have this sort of Artemis and like I can show you, but just to kind of like reassert this into what I thought was a place, Catholicism has kind of anti cult of Mary. Like they really are not into Mary. Like they say they're into Mary, but it's just because Mary has so many followers that they're into Mary. Like they kind of have to be into Mary. But I mean, I can talk more about that if you want, but it was just sort of my intervention into this sort of long history of Catholicism. I think that's it. These are some details, and I painted it in LA in sections of like 4x8 on gator board, and then went to Rome and cut it up to fit inside of the thing on the site. And there's a whole other level to thing that happens where it's like there's some animation in the ceiling, and there's in the bottom down here is I took an El Greco Mary and repainted it. Yeah, I can't really explain it, but it was dark in there, and I had an animated sequence of LED lights that sort of mimicked the stars, and then a few videos that were on LED. I think that's all I have. Stop sharing.
Wow.
Thank you so much. That was really amazing. And there are a couple questions. Do you have time for a couple questions, Laura?
Yeah. Sorry, I feel like I would talk forever.
It wasn't forever.
Okay.
I have a question just about today. Did you watch movies on the plane, or did you read a book?
I watched a really amazing movie on the plane, but I'm trying to learn French. So I watched it with subtitles and was reading it. And I'm pretty sure I understood it. It's gamin. Oh, I can write it in here. It's, if you want to like see a good version of parenting versus bad version of parenting, it's a very good movie. I think it won something at Cannes. It's really sad. It reminded me of did anyone ever see Kes? Kes? It's like a really famous British filmmaker made it about this kid and this hawk. And it reminded me of that. It's about a kid who's just basically abandoned by his dad, and I really recommend it.
Okay. We don't know what it's called?
I wrote it in the chat.
Oh,
Velo.
Okay. Awesome. So we have a couple questions from the chat. One is, someone wrote that they saw you in 2011, this is your life, at the Hammer Museum give a talk, and you said that your favorite painting of all time was Cézanne's The Large Bathers. This person always has, since then, has been wondering, why is that your favorite painting? And if they're mistaken and it's not your favorite, do you have a favorite painting and why?
I don't have a favorite painting. I love painting. I love looking at art. I love looking at paintings. And I went during this, I was doing a lockdown. I was supposed to do a show at the Van Gogh Foundation, and I went to Arles and I got my kid in French school. We were going to both learn French, and I was going to do the show, but then it was lockdown. So then I was like, I can either flee or I can have this like medieval Europe, because I was in a small town in France experience. So it was actually really fun, but my French did not improve that much. But at some point, the French are really good. Like they're really like, they follow the rules. They're into the rules. Like they lock down. They do it. They go inside. We weren't allowed out for more than an hour a day. But if, they open up, they open up. They all go to the restaurants. If they say don't go inside the restaurant, they sort of follow directions. So now they're about to go back into lockdown and they're all complaining. And I'm like, you guys have it so good. You have no idea. Because they're not, the level of anxiety, definitely they have anxiety about the situation, but it's nothing like the United States. And I feel like having this experience of getting to go between the two countries has been so illuminating to me, because you realize it doesn't have to be this way. It really doesn't. And but anyway, my point was I got to go to the Louvre because they opened the Louvre up like, I don't know, like July and August. And I was there and I was like, okay, it was cool. They, you wear masks, you go in. And I saw Raft of the Medusa. I mean, that blew my mind. I mean, like mind blowing, so relevant, so amazing painting. So not to contradict myself, but I feel like painting does that, where it's like, there are these classics, like, you can always depend on, but I mean, like you can go see a young painter and see a show and be like blown away too. But Raft of the Medusa, it's so, it's the struggle for people to survive. It's, basically reminded me of like refugees. It's, trying to cross water. But you walk up to it and the way it's painted, because of the varnish and stuff, it's like, it's almost like you can look in the water and see through, and like you might be able to tell if that's a big fish in there or not. And I don't mean in a trompe l'oeil way, but more in like a kind of your body, your movement, and the light source and everything sort of like makes it almost filmic, that's happening at your own pace. So I feel like paintings, I love all art. I like looking at art. So I'm just particularly interested in painting and all the many things it can do. So, but I did, sorry, I feel like I'm just digressing here. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that I think that answers it.
Okay.
It's not just the large bathers, it's all paintings.
Yeah, I feel like that's what's great about paintings. You change, you as a person change, and then you go to the museum and you notice something else, or you go to your friend's house and notice something else, and you're like, I'm a different person now, and now I really see this thing. Like Cezanne, I didn't get it until I was like 38 years old. I just didn't get it. I thought it was like, it's kind of like, looks all like homogenous. I don't know. And then it was like suddenly it turned on. It was like, it was like taking, I've never taken psychedelics, but it was like this sort of mind shift where I saw depth and space and the space between the brush strokes and stuff.
We have a couple questions about artist books that I'm going to compress into one question. Just about the urgency of making artist books, or the necessity. Someone wrote, can you speak more about the urgency or necessity for you of making or continuing to make artist books now? The Books and Tables show in particular seemed like a powerful counterstatement to so much of what's going on in the art world right now.
Well, I mean, for me, it started a long time before that. Like I'd been making these handmade books because I really like paper. I like the feeling of paper, and I like the tradition of Japanese paper making. And I'd been kind of almost like collecting Japanese paper, because it's like some of these paper makers, like the person who's doing it is like 100 years old and then dies, and then it's just not going to get made anymore. And it's kind of incredible. It's like these craft people that it's like mind blowing. And I don't think it's like one of these technologies. They'll be like 400 years from now and be like, how did this ever get made? And we won't know because no one's going to continue to do it. So anyway, so I was like really into paper and making, painting on paper, and I had put it behind glass, and I was just like, I don't, to show drawings. I was like, I just don't like that you can't feel it. And then at the same time I had taken out, I really feel like the public library is like one of the best things about this country, if we can talk about it. But I love going to the public library and checking out a book that's from like the 40s and feeling it's different feeling of paper, and knowing all these people have touched it before me, and there's sort of this like community of reciprocity where at some point I opened the book and I was like, this is a work of art. This is, because it was a book about art, so it sounds kind of redundant, but I did feel the way it was made and what the story it told. And I think it was a Matisse book or something, but I was able to check it out for free out of a public library. And, I just wanted people to I wanted to have that one-on-one experience, which you hold in your hand, and the temporal nature of turning the pages gets to be in the viewer's point of view, their own control, kind of like what I was trying to say about looking at the raft of the Medusa. It's like I got to control how the film moved, or the filmic space moved by my body, like the turning the page and looking at it. If it is an artist book, it's sort of like the subjectivity changes the artwork every time it's viewed. Anyway, so I started doing that like 10 years ago, and then I'd always wanted to do a show of all books. And I think I did this retrospective at the Whitney, and it's kind of a mind fuck. So I think this was just a really good thing for me to do after showing a lot of paintings, but also just to like get a lot of ideas out. Somehow it's easier for me to put a lot of ideas in a book because it seems less consequential than a painting. Like painting has a lot of gravity to it and weight and meaning, and people take it really seriously. It takes more time to make sometimes not. Books, some of these books took like forever to make, and I had like tons of people helping me. So it's kind of like a perversity going on there. But I do think I do think that like the artist book and artist prints, I just want to, Ruben, love your print. But I do think that prints are underrated. They're so underrated. They're like accessible artwork anybody can have, and it's just a medium that people are just underappreciating. Like painting is a medium, sculpture is a medium, printmaking is a medium. And I think just collectors and people don't understand that it's its own medium. And so it's just very undervalued, I think. And I think I love printmaking, and I love artist books. Sorry, I feel jet lagged.
It was great. I love the way you talked about the public library as this space where it's a community space where everybody can have access to the same information. Yeah. And that's such a different kind of world than we're inhabiting now with, the conspiracy theories that everyone has their own reality. So there's something about what you're saying about the books and prints too, made for a larger audience that can all sort of participate, that kind of goes back to what you were talking about in some of the subjects of the books, just like the idea of the book and how that mimics what you're talking about in a lot of the books. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think books are approachable too. Like people feel like, the feeling of the show is a little bit in between art gallery and bookstore, like a little bit, so it had this feeling like it wasn't like people had a standoffish relationship to the art, which I liked. But I feel like that happens with embroidery and crewel work and too. It's like you just change mediums and suddenly like people can relax a little.
Mhm. Thank you, Laura. I think we're gonna let you go to sleep or
Oh yeah.
not. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. I know it's
Thank you
tough
for
after a
doing
flight,
this.
so
Yeah.
we appreciate it. And we're going to go on to Lynn has a couple things to say before we wrap up totally, I think. Yeah. So thanks so much. And Lynn?
Shiza. Okay.
Uh-oh. Lynn is muted.
I know.
Okay, here we are.
Okay.
Thank you all for joining us for this last lecture that A4D has hosted before the election. And we brought this lecture series together to help get out the vote for 2020. So a couple things to think about is you can check your ballot and you can go to Ballot Tracks or the Secretary of State for your state's website and see if your ballot has made it in. There has been an important Supreme Court decision in Wisconsin about absentee and mail-in ballots that is really going to impact this election potentially. So if you change your mind and you decide you want to vote in person instead of mailing in your ballot, it can be done, but you need to check in and find out how it's done with your individual state. But encouraging you to make sure you're doing the right thing with your ballot, that it's getting in, that if you need to go and do it in person, that you're finding out the right way to do it. And again, it's going to be really important. Other states can be contested as well. And lastly, we have more events coming up. This is not it. We've got a phone banking event on Sunday with Swing Left that will begin at 5 o'clock. We'll have a gathering with A4D from 5 to 5:30. And then Swing Left will be joining us to train you to phone bank. And we'll have a phone banking session for Joe Biden to get out the vote for Joe Biden. So we're hoping people can come and join us. We're putting the links into the chat for all this information. And again, thank you again for coming. The election's coming next week. Get your ballots in, vote, and then stay involved. This is not going to end once we have our election. There is always more work to be done. And as artists, you have such an important role. We're trying to keep the momentum going after the election, no matter which way the direction ends up. And so we're sending out a form of how you might want to stay engaged. We'll be starting up the lecture series again eventually once we regroup. And again, thank you so much for joining us and good luck. Stay safe, stay engaged, and stay energized. Okay, thank you.